Hey guys, Dr. Andrew Lobacz. Today we're going to be talking about weight loss. We're going to have my friend Dr. Adam Downs in a conversation here in just a few minutes. We're going to kind of interview him, kind of get his take on what it takes to actually, eat right, how to exercise. What do we really need? What do we need to do? How do we eat? Do we eat paleo or carnivore or, tomato soup? We're about to find out. All right. So we have Adam here on the line, and I've known Adam for, well, we went to chiropractic school together. And
Yep.
I would see Adam in the gym a lot of times, and Adam would obviously be uh, kind of like once in a while he'd just look over and show me how to do something better. And a lot of times, frankly, when I was in the gym, um, especially if you're not like a gym rat, right? Like sometimes you see things in the gym and you just go, I don't even know what that machine does, right? So Adam was real good about showing me how to work it and how not to hurt myself in the process. So yeah, anyway, known Adam a long time, but Adam's been doing this quite a long time even. So Adam, how long you been working out, would you say, and taking care of yourself like this?
Well, started out playing sports growing up, and I would lift periodically. My family we had a little bit of weights in the basement, and I'd get on little kicks during middle school, early high school, and work out in the basement. But worked out for sports, and then decided not to play college sports. And when I did that, I had a lot more time on my hand, but I still had the athletic mindset. So when I was about 18, I really started to make the gym a priority. And the goal was always to get bigger. I was a skinny kid. I was 6'1", 155 when I graduated high school.
Oh
So the goal
wow.
was always more mass, more mass, more mass.
Mm,
Eat everything I could. And then, I really wanted to be a bodybuilder, but at 6'1", you're looking at having to be about 240 pounds on stage to really look like you can hold your own. And that was not feasible with my frame. So I put that dream on the back burner, and then found out in 2006 that there were some other options in the bodybuilding world. You didn't have to be gigantic. And I did my first two bodybuilding shows in 2006. I think we would have been 2 years into practice at that point. And then, but same thing, even for those organizations where I didn't have to be as big, the judges was like, oh, you need to be bigger. I was like, I outweighed the guy you placed ahead of me by 15 pounds. I'm just
yeah.
so much taller. It just doesn't work real well. So I took a break. And then in about 2010, they created a new category called men's physique. And it's really geared towards my body type. So I started competing again in 2011. And almost a year ago, was the last time I competed. And I think I was 17 competitions over the years since 2006,
Oh
six of
wow.
them nationally, competing for a pro card. So a lot of experience helping others along the way. I never really coached anyone, but always kind of helped others along the way. My main coach when I was like heavy in my competing was the top men's physique coach in the country. So got a lot of knowledge from him too. Obviously, that kind of weight management, weight loss, fat loss is a little bit different than what the average person is looking to do, but the principles are basically the same, and so
Right.
it always translates.
Yeah, that's what I want to say was that, there's anyone watching this, that we're not trying to make you a bodybuilder here. That's
Right.
not the idea today.
Right.
But it's basically just to kind of see, there's a lot of confusing topics that come up with weight loss as far as, which one should I do? Like the tomato soup diet, the
Yeah.
carnivore diet, paleo or keto or all this kind of stuff, right? And so we kind of wanted to, we were actually talking about this a little bit before we started, but I kind of want to like continue that conversation because I think it's super important that, a lot of people, and I've seen them come in my office before where, they said, well, I've done, even like intermittent fasting or like timed eating, is kind of what I usually call that instead of, fastings are more like a day at a time, in my opinion. But
Mhm.
if you do an intermittent fasting or like multiple days of not eating, like what'll ends up happening is you were kind of explaining kind of that yo-yo diet. Like, can you kind of let's use real world numbers and kind of go over that so people kind of understand what this is all about.
Yeah. God, we could, each time you say something, I'm like, oh, we could talk about that for like 20, 30 minutes. But,
Yeah, right.
um, one of the biggest things I I read a study, it was a number of years ago, and that's what I was telling you. I was trying to find updated information, but you know, everything still kind of remains the same when it comes to this. A lot of people, number one, I don't like the word diet. I usually talk to my patients or anyone who is picking my brain. I said, just remember, diet is just what you eat. That's
Right.
your habits. That's your habits of consumption. So don't, you know, when someone goes, "Oh, I'm starting my diet on Monday," like, man, you better been eating this whole time. Like, okay, you're going to start a weight loss journey, a fat loss journey. Okay, yes, I get it. Or weight management. And so, you know, sometimes I have to kind of back off and say, okay, it's all right to use diet. Next question is usually, what's the best diet for me to do? Whichever one you can stick with. If we're going to call your weight loss journey a diet, then let's say whatever one you can stick with. And then there's more nuances and we get into it. But one of the things I like to explain to patients too is, you know, if you're one of those people who's, I've tried this, I've tried that, I've lost weight, I've gained it back, you know, we're doing the yo-yo like you were saying. Just to talk round numbers, let's say someone's starting off at 200 pounds, their goal weight is 140, right? So they start this diet, they now lose 40 pounds, they're down to 160. They're struggling because it's hard to adhere to whatever program they're following, or they're just simply calorie restricting, which we can talk about a little bit more in just a moment. Well, if they're not lifting weights, and this is not me being a bodybuilder, like, oh, everyone's got to lift weights. That's purely research. When it comes to weight management, there is no superior exercise above weight resistance training, weightlifting, lifting of some kind. Doesn't mean you have to go lift like a bodybuilder, but you have to stress your muscles to keep them strong, to maintain or build. So if this person's just losing weight, they're just restricting their calories, they drop those 40 pounds. 15% of that weight loss is muscle tissue. That's a big deal, because that person who yo-yos back up to 200 pounds does not put that muscle tissue back on when they add those 40 pounds back. So whatever body fat percentage, whatever their composition was when they started at 200, went to 160 and go back up to 200, that new 200 is now a different body composition. It's going to be a higher percentage of body fat.
Man, it's
And, you know,
so
and
hard to
that's
put
also,
muscle on to lose it. Just good.
yeah,
Night.
yep, yeah. So, you know, you and I understand this from school. You know, a lot of that fat's going around the organs. So now we're going to affect just our normal organ function in a wide variety of ways. I watched a video just this morning, a guy who's a weight loss management doctor, and you may have actually seen it, actually, because it was part of our HBL group. He made a really good point. You know, most people who are showing up in doctors' offices with problems or in the hospital, their first issue is the obesity.
Yeah.
And that leads to the other disorders or diseases that they tend to develop. So, you know, when people are like, well, I'm happy with who I am, I get it. I think that that's very important. But, you know, research is research. That increased adipose tissue, that fat tissue, is taking its toll on your health.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Yeah. Some of this movement we have today of, you know, everyone needs to be happy with who they are is almost
I
it's
love it.
dangerous.
I
It's
love it.
dangerous to their health.
But it is, yes, it's the, I just saw a guy the other day. He's like, I got better things to do than exercise. I'm like, well, it's a proven fact. Exercise is going to lengthen and increase your not only quality of life but the longevity of it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to be in phenomenal shape. But like you said earlier, I don't talk to my patients as if I expect them to do what I do or get to a physique that I've gotten to. I have good genetics. That helps. I have an athletic background. That helps. I enjoy lifting. That helps. I do it as much for my mental as I do for my physical. Um, you know, when people ask me what's the biggest key, it doesn't work for everybody, but the number one key, never get out of shape in the first place.
You're
Then
right.
you don't have to get into shape. All right.
Yeah.
So there's factors, but the reality is everyone can make improvements. I can make improvements in where I am now. You
You
know,
know
and
what?
you
That
talked
makes
about
a
calorie restriction.
that's an interesting point though, because you say never get out of shape, but that's probably not why people are watching this video today. But you would
No.
say once you get there, you probably
Skater.
stay pretty close within, maybe a point or two. I would say a body fat percentage is what I mean, through the year. Like you don't have like times where you're like, well, it's getting to be summertime, I better start leaning out. Like
Yeah.
you're the same in
Yeah.
winter as you are in the summer. I mean, or fairly very
Yeah.
close.
I've had a lot of people ask how I would get ready for bodybuilding shows or physique shows so quickly. And it was, I didn't let myself get out. There's a mindset in that world of as big as possible. I'll add some fat in order to add more muscle. And there is some reality to that, some accuracy to that, but it's so much harder to take off. Every time you add more, it's harder to take off. And anyone watching this video who's tried, the weight loss journey multiple times in their lives, they know that's like, man, it gets harder each time. A
Yeah.
lot of it's mindset. That's one of the biggest things I talk to people too, is like, this is not simply, okay, get more active, mind your calories, things like that. It's the mental and emotional attachment to food and behaviors. That is the hardest part to break. It's one of the biggest reasons. You and I talked about this a few months ago when you're like, why aren't you doing more weight loss in your office? I said, because I have a hard time just giving something to someone and hope that they do a good job with it, because I know that there's so much more to it. Just like my philosophy really is calories in versus calories out. And a lot of people hate hearing that. And some people who like to get into the nitty gritty that don't necessarily know everything, but they like to know details about things. They go, oh, it's so much more than calories in versus calories out. No, it's not. It's simple math. It really is calories in versus calories out. Now, it is more nuanced than that. But the reality is this: if you want to lose weight or you want to lose fat, you have to be burning more calories than you consume.
Yeah.
Now, people want to sit there and say, well, I lost weight and I didn't exercise. Yeah, you're on a calorie restriction. Your basal metabolic rate, your body was still burning. You burn a lot more calories while you're sleeping than people realize. Like you're
Sure.
always burning. It takes a
Literally laying
lot
in
of
bed
energy.
all day, you're burning
Yep.
calories. Now, I wouldn't
Yep.
recommend that to do
No.
that, but
No. And that's
there
why
is a number.
right. With the calories in versus calories out, when I start to expand on that, when people are like, no, it's not, it's more than that. I'm like, no, it is. But here's the thing. Do you want to significantly restrict your calories if you refuse to do any physical activity? Because that's your only option. And that's where a lot of people end up failing, because they're like, oh my gosh, I'm just so hungry. Well, yeah, you're not eating anything.
Right.
One of the simplest things to start with, just start walking.
Yeah.
Start walking, not casual. Walk with intention. You and I being chiropractors, intention is a very, very, very big thing with anything we do.
Absolutely. Like
Start
it's
walking with intention.
non-negotiably. Just you have to do it every
Yeah.
day. And what's
Just
funny?
start walking.
You have to track your steps if you're want to get, I think it's important to document kind of where you're at, what you're doing.
Yeah.
The first time I walked around my block, I thought, oh, that's probably 10,000 steps. And it's a big block, right? So I thought it probably was, but I'd never really
Yeah.
tracked it. And I looked at my pedometer and I go, oh, wow, that's like 3,200 steps. I'm a
Yeah.
long way
Yeah.
off. So,
Right.
it takes some time, to do this. But if I've
Well,
found personally, if you break it up throughout the day, you do one in the morning, maybe you walk after
yeah.
lunch, and then evening time as it cools down, like it's summertime, obviously right now. So, and then take a walk at nighttime. I mean, you don't have to do it all at one time, but you
No, and there's
get it
nothing, and
in.
that's actually wouldn't be a bad idea to do it like that. You do a 30-minute walk when you wake up, especially getting that morning sunlight, which is really huge for health.
Absolutely.
Um, you go for a 15-minute walk after lunch, do another 30-minute after dinner. You just
Hmm.
walked an hour and 15 minutes in the day. And if you're
Right.
doing it with intention, your steps are going to be pretty quick. So you're going to get more steps in. It's like really just start with that. You don't have to go lift weights. You don't have to do what I do. Although I will tell you, the science says that that's going to be your best option.
Right.
But find something you like. If there's an act you like riding your bike, start riding your bike, but ride it with intention. Make sure that it's rigorous. It's a little bit of a stress. The reason we get in shape with any physical activity is because you're applying a stress to your body. Your nervous system recognizes that there's something happening and now I have to adapt. And the way to adapt is to get in better shape so I can handle that stress the next time I face it.
Right.
That's all it's really doing. You know, we make things a lot more complicated, but
You
the
know,
other
one thing
thing
I do
you
like
talked about,
about walking too. Sorry to interrupt you. One thing
no,
about
go ahead.
walking I've noticed is that you don't get back and like, oh my gosh, I need to eat something. I am starved. Like it's
Right,
very, you know, I mean, it's killing calories off, but it's not necessarily like going to put you into a hunger state, which I think is awesome.
right. Yeah, you're not necessarily catabolic from that activity where your body, oh man, I just crushed all that glycogen from my liver and my muscles. I need to restore it. But you're burning, like you said, and you're moving. This all comes down to, I talk to patients all the time, not even talking about weight loss, weight management, but just in general. You're in my office because of an accumulation of stress and trauma throughout your entire life.
Right.
And it's because of static versus dynamic.
Hmm.
You have certain joints in your body that have become static, and that's causing a whole cascade effect. If we can get back to a dynamic state, you're going to be healthier. And when it comes to weight management, weight loss, and fat loss, and you do no activity, let's start with walking.
Right.
Start with walking. You're establishing a habit too. So you're creating this pattern, this habit. Now, as you continue to add new things, you've already got the routine. It's
Hmm.
That's the other thing. Just quick tangent. Why a lot of
Yeah.
people fail,
Sure.
they try to do too much at once,
Hmm.
or it's all or nothing, or it's something drastic. Like I'm going to stop eating this, which we could talk about. To me, any diet program that talks about restricting certain large groups of food or only eating one group of food,
Right.
one food group. I Dr. Sean Baker is like one of the forefront guys for the carnivore diet. And even he recently has been like, well, some fruits, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, of
Of course.
course.
Yeah.
Like, why are we demonizing food groups that humans have been consuming for tens of thousands of years? Whether people are like,
Right.
oh, red meat's horrible for you. How is it that we survived on it for so long and it's only in the last 2 generations it became horrible? We have to consider the source if that's the problem or what else is going on.
Right.
And again, not everything is for everybody. You have to find what works for you. So you just mentioned, counting your steps. That's very, very important in the beginning until you kind of figure out your routine. I tell people all the time, look, I know it's not going to be fun, but you're going to have to weigh and measure your food for a while.
Yeah.
Because until you know your body and until you get to a place where you can just work on maintenance, I guarantee you don't know how much you're consuming.
Right. I could totally believe that. And it's
Yeah,
not fun
it's
weighing your
shocking
food
to
out.
people.
It's a little tough, it's a little, you don't usually
Yeah,
do that, and people think other people in your family or people seeing you are going, what are you doing? Like
right.
taking this whole extreme, aren't you? And you go, no, I'm just doing what needs to be done.
Yeah, try to stay alive and healthy. If I have to do something extreme to be alive and healthy, then so
So
be
be
it.
it. Yeah, absolutely, man. So, I think there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to, weight loss in general. Like what are some of the ones that, people probably ask you all the time. And like I said, we're not trying to make everybody bodybuilders here, but
Right.
what are some other things you're seeing?
Well, like the three that always crack me up is fat makes you fat, eating
Okay.
fat makes you fat.
Yep.
I mean, that's been proven wrong forever, and yet people still buy into it. And
Yeah.
even healthcare professionals still push that. I mean, that was discovered decades ago that was a marketing thing.
Right.
That's what that all came down to.
Sure.
Um, Eating cholesterol raises your cholesterol. Okay, so
Right.
if I got a patient whose primary care told them to stop consuming cholesterol because their cholesterol is high, I'd like a primary care doctor to explain to me how this person's supposed to make their hormones.
Right.
Your hormones are sterols.
Literally come. Yep. Yep. Like if you look at
And then
where
salt.
cholesterol comes from or hormones come from, you have to have it. It's the
Right.
ingredients. That's silly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And then
okay,
the
so
third
salt.
one is salt.
Okay, so salt and sea salt specifically, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's you know right now where people are starting to recognize, like, you could actually put some sea salt, or some pink salt in your water first thing in the morning. It helps rehydrate you, because you grow up thinking, oh, you can't drink seawater, it'll dehydrate you. Well, yeah, seawater will, but
Yeah.
putting some salt in your water is a little different. I actually use a product called Relight, RE-LYTE. It's by Redmond Life. They're a company out of Utah. It's their electrolytes. So it's got sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium. Really, really good. And they flavor it, so it tastes really good too. Because a lot of people, for whatever reason, don't like to drink water flavored. So there's your option. And there's even a discount code I could give you if you wanted.
Yeah, that's fine. We can put that on there.
Yeah, hold on, let me pull it up. It's saved in my account when I add it.
I'll tell you what, I'll just post it. I'll post it below, man. We can do it later. No worries.
Okay. All right. But I found that I don't need to sit here and force myself to drink a gallon of water to stay hydrated if I've got electrolytes in my water. Like my cells are going to stay more hydrated without having to flood the hydration. A lot of people struggle with, hey, we're going to go through a weight loss program. You need to start consuming more water. Right. I don't really like to drink water. Let's look for something that's actually good for you that will allow you to not have to drink as much, but you still probably need to drink more than you are. The beauty of water, I've always found this fascinating. You want to gain weight, drink more water. You want to lose weight, drink more water.
Right.
That's how important and how awesome it is. It's just going to follow whatever your intentions are, what you're trying to accomplish. It's going to make it all happen better.
And maybe if you're not having to drink a gallon of water a day, you're not, walking to the bathroom 47 times too. So.
Well, that's the other thing. If you have proper electrolytes, you're going to stay intercellular, like within the cells are going to stay hydrated rather than extracellular, which is what's going to make someone have to go to the bathroom more often. So what I was going to say with those three things, the fat doesn't make you fat, high cholesterol, the salt, and all that stuff. If you restrict those during your intake, your body wants to hold on to whatever little bit it does get.
Right.
Which is oftentimes why someone might have a higher percent of body fat. Increased sodium, increased cholesterol, all these different things, and can contribute to hypertension. Now, if you're just throwing table salt on everything, that's not necessarily the best idea.
Right.
Because you could overdo it. But yeah, that's my biggest one is always fat. Fat doesn't make fat. Consuming too many calories and not burning enough will make you fat.
Okay. A lot of people, demonize carbs, carbs being your enemy. And I've always explained to people that basically carbs are long chains of sugar. So when they break down, you do have sugar. And, a lot of people say, like, don't eat sugar, stay away from sugar. And I would agree for the most part, excess sugar is not a good thing. Right. But also, just like, for lack of a better, thing that people will understand, if you're baking a cake, you need to have the right ingredients. And if you're making your body right, you also have to have the right ingredients. So carbs are not, if there's a difference between a bunch of processed carbs and actual good carbs for you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, that's what we're kind of talking about is, cake is in the bad list, but having, let's say, I don't know, broccoli. Broccoli could be considered, well, there's some carbs in broccoli or an apple or something like this.
Right.
You can't say that that's bad. So it's not just good or bad necessarily. Or, you can't say a carb is good or bad. It can be kind of, well, tell me more. Like, what kind of carb? What are we looking at?
Right. That really falls in line with the calories in versus calories out, and you get some people that get a little bit of a zealot of a calorie is a calorie is a calorie. The calorie is simply a measure, it's a unit, it's a measurement. That's really all it is. It's a measurement of energy. But the quality of the calorie does make a difference. Because you want to lose weight, if you choose ice cream to be your source of calories, And okay, I need to be at 1,900 calories a day to be at a 500 calorie deficit. That way I'm starting to lose weight. And you're going to do 1,800 of it is only ice cream. I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to be very hungry throughout the day because you're going
Yeah.
to get your 1,800 calories of ice cream and those carb contents pretty quickly and then have nothing left to eat the rest of the day. So, it's the garbage in versus garbage out. The
Yeah.
quality of the calorie, the nutritional density of the food plays a huge role, and that ties into the protein, the fat, and the carbohydrates. Carbs are evil. I think what happened with a lot of programs was it was very simple to cut because there's so much of it in our lives, and people saw results. They're like, "Oh man, I cut out those carbs and I lost weight." But you could have cut out protein, you'd have lost weight. You could have cut out fat, you would have lost weight. You basically just started to restrict. That's why a lot of people look at paleo or keto or carnivore or vegetarian or vegan or whatever as that's their fix. Really, all it came down to was they started to make choices.
Right.
They started to control their food intake. And so they most likely brought their intake down. Their portions became more controlled. But I'll tell you right now, I've gotten more shredded on my preps for competitions by keeping carbs in my diet than when I cut the carbs out of my diet. And I've seen that over and over and over again with a ton of physique athletes. They have an old school coach that just cuts their carbs. That's how they get shredded and lose that weight, lose that fat. And they never felt right. And they get with the coach who actually gets how nutrition works. And they're like, no, we'll fluctuate your carbs. We might pull them back, but we got to keep those in. And you see them get leaner, they're healthier. And so I'm not saying anyone needs to go to those extremes, that intensity. The principles are still the same.
Right.
You got to
I
keep
got
your
you.
fat, your protein, and your carbs in your diet. But let's talk about how much, what ratio, and what the source is. And
Okay.
also, what am I doing to burn? What I got to do my part to burn those calories too. I just restrict. A conversation you can have with people is, would rather keep restricting your calories? Would you rather increase your activity so you keep eating more food? I will always choose to increase my physical activity so I can keep eating more food.
Hang on, Adam, hang on just a second, man. We're probably gonna have to pause this for a minute because I don't know if it's our
Yeah,
internet or what, but it
yeah,
keeps like getting glitchy. I'm not really sure. Um, it says I got about 5 minutes left anyway, because I'm on a 40-minute time
yeah,
Zoom thing. Let me close
yeah,
this one out and kind of get this. It'll kind of like take a few minutes to record it or whatever, or save it. And then if it's all right,
yeah,
I'll give you a call back in a few more minutes. Is that okay?
yep.
All right.
Perfect, man.
All right.
Yep,
Hang
I'm
tight.
good.
Record here. All right, so we kind of got cut off there with Zoom time. So hopefully we still have some people that are watching these videos here. But yeah, so I think we were talking about being calories in and calories out, and kind of where different types of calories or different types of carbs can be better or worse for you. Um, I think we got that kind of covered. Is it anything else you wanted to add there?
No, it really comes down to choosing nutrient dense foods versus calorie dense foods.
Keep you fuller longer too, right? Is that
Yeah, yeah,
so? What you were saying earlier about ice cream, are you saying if you figured out the amount of calories that you could have per day to lose weight, whatever number we come up with, 2,000, let's say. I think that's what they call the average, right? Like, or
right.
what they recommend, which is always hilarious to me, what they recommend.
Yeah,
Um, could you just eat that in Twinkies throughout the day and still lose weight? Could you get to that number and still lose weight?
and still lose weight. Yeah,
Right. You
yeah,
could still even, and I say that kind of being funny, right? But because I mean, I
right.
don't want people to be doing that, but you could also technically eat out a meal and choose the right things.
Right.
Not that I'm recommending people do that 3 times a day or 6 times a day or
Right.
something like that, but you could still do that. I mean, it's not like you're like so restricted that you can't, you know, not, I wouldn't even call it cheat. You're still eating
Right.
good portions, the right things at the right time, right? So it
Right.
can be
I
super
think
important.
that's a great topic to bring up because a lot of people feel like, well, my life's got to drastically change. I can't enjoy this anymore. I can't do that anymore. No, you just got to plan. I've
Yeah.
I've had to do family events or things in the middle of a prep for a competition, and I was like, I'm not going to be that guy who brings his own chicken and broccoli and blah blah blah. I'm going to eat whatever's there. And
Yeah.
then that, of course, everyone's like, oh, you eat like that? I thought you ate. I'm like, no, I like a patient finds out I have cake or I have ice cream or I eat pizza, and they're like, oh, what? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like I'm a human being. You
Right.
just have to
It's
plan.
funny.
So,
When we were in school, I tried to kind of do like the Bill Phillips thing, right? Like,
mhm.
and
Oh
this
man,
is like
that's a
old school
throwback.
stuff, right? So it's,
Yeah,
yeah, right. But Bill's thing was he would have like a cheat meal or a cheat day, right? I can't remember it's been 20 years ago, right? But so when we were talking on the phone, not too awful long ago, you were telling me how you go to like donuts, was like on Friday mornings before your haircuts, like you go get like
yeah,
donuts. Like
yeah.
how many, I mean, and again, this isn't for everybody. I don't recommend everybody do this. Like, I'm starting a new diet today and I'm going to do donuts. Like that's
Yeah.
probably
You know
not the
how
right
often I
thing.
have a donut? I have a
Tell
donut
me.
maybe 2, 3 times a year.
Okay.
So, but the fact that I have one
Yeah.
astonishes people who don't have a grasp or I don't want to say control, but have a grasp on their own food intake. That's mind-boggling to them. One of the things I've seen lately from guys I like to follow is like 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
Be really good 80% of the time, and then 20% of the time, live your life. Now, the problem is some people hear that and they go, oh, well, in their mind, if 8 of my 10 meals are good, the two can be whatever. But they
Right.
don't consider the fact that those 2 meals just took up 30% of their calories, though.
Right.
So it's really 80-20. There's still a little more to it. It's not just 80-20, but you have to look at the details that go into that. But okay. But basically saying with the 80-20 rules, you still have to be in control and be smart with that 20%. It's not 8 of your 10 meals are perfect and then your two go crazy. If those two take up 30% of your caloric intake, then that's not okay. That's going to affect things pretty negatively. Or the classic, I knew a bunch of guys back in the day that were like, they would lift Monday through Friday, they would eat really clean Monday through Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday was party time. No
Right.
gym, eat whatever. And unfortunately, I'm like, you're more than just undoing all your good work Monday through Friday. Like, enjoy yourself, have a donut, have a bowl of ice cream, live your life, but control those things. You know, like you mentioned Bill Phillips with the old cheat days or cheat meal. Those are fine, but they should be planned. They should be strategic, and it doesn't need to be oh, my cheat meal is 1,000 calories, and I can only have 2,000 for the day. Well, you had one meal to consume half your calories. That's going to be kind of tough to get through the rest of the day.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I like that too. 80-20 makes sense, but yeah, I mean, I totally see that a lot of times as well, where people get a little naughty during the weekends, and they drink a lot of their calories, right? Like they get into either a beer or
That's yeah,
Coke or any kind of things that are, sugar
yep,
containing. All these things, they all are just taking up space where you don't really need that space
right.
in in the body. Um, so let me ask you this then.
That's
Tell me like a
yeah.
typical day of your eating. Like what does that look like?
So I'm very different than most. I around 18 or so started having issues with having breakfast right when I woke up. I developed some digestive issues. Some of it's hereditary. And so right around the time of going to college, all of a sudden I'd eat breakfast and I would just feel nauseated all day. And so I stopped eating breakfast, which was a bad move, but I stopped eating breakfast. And that's right about the time I started getting heavier into lifting weights and everything too. And I was always struggling to make improvements in the gym. And I was like, well, I need to start consuming more calories and better calories. So that's when I really got big into making shakes. And so a lot of people, when they hear shakes, they think like either a smoothie or just a protein shake. But when I was in college, I didn't care what I was consuming.
Right.
I was so thin, it's like whatever. I would put heavy whipping cream in the shake, whole fat yogurt, whole milk, fruit, protein powder. I mean, I would put everything in there. And then as I got older, I started to kind of realize, okay, it needs to be better quality, nutrient dense stuff. So I start every day, actually every morning and every afternoon, especially with work. I'm actually drinking shake. So I make one big one first thing in the morning and I split it into 2 containers. My standards, my go-tos, spinach, some kind of fruit, typically berry based. Berries are kind of like, we love throwing around superfoods all the time, but berries are actually one of those ones. It's like pound for pound. It's one of the best things you can consume, any type of berry, other than strawberry. But strawberries are still okay too. But your blueberries, your blackberries, your raspberries, things like that. Sometimes I'll be on a kick with apples. Sometimes I'll be on a kick with banana. Eggs. I'm a big egg person, which always grosses people out. I'm like, look, if you're putting it in a shake, you don't even know it's in there. It's good
Right.
cholesterol. It's great protein. It's good fat.
Oh, but what
And then
about
you
the
have some people argue,
salmonella? Right? What about
yeah,
get freaked
yes,
out of
this
that one,
never.
huh?
I couldn't tell you how many eggs I've consumed in my life. Let's just say I've been doing shakes like this for 25 years. And raw eggs have always been a staple, and it's always been anywhere from 3 to 12 eggs at a time.
Oh
So
wow. Okay.
I'm good. Um, but some people will say, well, don't you need to cook eggs to get so it's better absorbed by the body and everything like that? Yeah, when it comes to the protein and nutrients in egg, it is better cooked. But the cholesterol, the healthy cholesterol aspect, actually gets ruined during cooking. So that's better for you if it's raw. I always look at it this way. I would have a really hard time eating 12 cooked eggs throughout a day,
Right.
but 12
That's a
raw eggs
lot.
are like no big deal. Right.
Yeah.
12
Yeah,
raw eggs
fair.
are like no big deal in my shake. And so maybe I don't absorb as much, but I'm still getting a higher quantity than I would have otherwise if I try to consume them cooked. So eggs are always a staple. Sometimes a juice. So, through the fruit and all that stuff, that's a lot of sugar. It's all fructose though. That's quick burn your body. That's sugar your body is okay with. Um, Avocados are usually a staple too. Really good healthy fats. And then I'll add a couple things. Maybe add protein powder, maca root. I'll add fiber to it. MCT oil, which is medium chain triglyceride, so that it's a fat, but it breaks down much quicker than most fats. So it works. It's kind of like a hybrid between a carb and a fat as far as a fuel source. And just kind of mix things up as far as that goes. But that's kind of my staple.
So you
I
do one
haven't
of those for
measured in a long time.
breakfast and one
Hmm.
after lunch or lunchtime or
So
something like
I'll
that?
have one of those for breakfast. I'll come home, eat lunch. Lunch is usually going to be, I always try to make protein a priority. So it's, I do beef more than anything. I haven't really done chicken for a long, long time. Every once in a while I'll do turkey. I like fish. I just don't like cooking it in the house too often.
Yeah, it stinks, huh?
So yeah, beef
Sure.
and eggs, steak and eggs, typically my staples. So for lunch, I'll do that. Usually, rice will be my carb source. Um, maybe I'll do like beef and a salad or something like that. Whole grain pasta sometimes if I'm on a little bit of a kick with that. I don't do too much of that. Then I go back to work, have the second half of my shake, and then dinner is kind of whatever I'm in the mood for. If I'm being better, I'll stick with like my steak, rice, veggies. If I'm splurging, I'll have pizza. I probably
Yeah.
eat pizza way more than people think I should or realize that I do. But I do so many other good things throughout the day. Plus, I'm always lifting. I always
Yeah.
make sure I'm burning stuff too. I don't
Right.
get the greatest pizza all the time or make it with cauliflower crust. But I also try not to get just absolute garbage. I try to get something that's like, it's a whole grain, it's got veggies on it, a little bit of meat, things like that. But it's pretty basic. I don't eat crazy. I'll tell you the biggest secret is portion control.
Yeah.
I never in my life have overeaten ever. I learned really early age for me that if I overate, I got really, really sick, and I
Mm.
just don't do it. I have like an automatic shutoff valve. So
Right.
that's actually a really, really big way to kind of control a lot of these things. It's you don't necessarily have to restrict your caloric intake, but just don't be overdoing your. You know, we we had a couple buddies in Cairo school, and they'd always be like, "How do you leave food on your plate if we went out to eat?" I'm like, "I'm full."
I'm
They're
done.
like, "I can't do that. I got to finish it." I'm like, "You don't have to finish it."
Yeah.
One of the reasons
Right.
why I've stayed lean and you guys keep gaining weight through school is you're overeating.
Mm.
So that's we mentioned earlier about as big of a hassle and headache as it might be, measuring and counting is going to be very, very important in the beginning because I guarantee two things. Someone either eats a lot more than they realize, like if you say, okay, show me what a portion of meat would be, and they're going to put like way too much on there, most likely,
Right.
or they're way under eating. They're that person that eats like one meaty meal a day. Like, I don't understand why I'm still gaining weight. Well, 'cause your body's in hibernation mode. You're
Yeah.
not, you have to give it some fuel too. You burn
There's
calories eating.
yeah, man. So you were kind of talking about we had a little break with the computer system there, but you were talking about how under eating is an issue as well. And I'm just from my understanding, it underregulates the metabolism basically. Like your
Yeah,
metabolism slows way down, and you're not going to be able to burn fat anymore if you're just under eating.
right. Because it wants to store. It needs to be sure, the body's looking at saying, oh, there must be a scarcity, so I need to store anything I can. And odds are the person's probably not very active as well. Um, so yeah, the body wants to store that energy if
It may
needed.
need it. Yeah, fair enough.
Yep. So um, it's always a tough one because I know there's a lot of research out there that can point to different things. Part of the problem too is when you're under eating is it's going to affect hormones. So your biochemistry gets thrown off. That's going to affect your metabolism. I mean, there's a lot of cascade effect that happens. And one thing to always keep in mind too, even some things that happen to the body, like degeneration, um, you're not eating enough, and yet you're somehow putting on body fat. It's defense mechanism. Arthritic, changes are wear and tear of the body. Your body's trying to say, oh, I've got a bad joint that's not working properly, so I'll just fuse the whole thing together. That's my
Yeah,
protective mechanism. That's my defense against that. I'm not getting enough calories. You know what? I better store some fat because it looks like we're going for a famine here anytime soon, and I'm going to need those energy stores. And all of those things can be, it really is. It's about balance. That's really
yeah,
what you're trying to find, and that's why I really like weight management as a way to describe it rather than just weight loss. That weight loss should be focused on fat loss, and you know you had mentioned in the outline you sent me about focusing on the scale and things like that, because I tell patients all the time the scale is a tool. It's there just to kind of show a progress, not necessarily the only progress. You want to
you
look
know,
at.
I was thinking
Go
about
ahead.
this morning, and it was kind of it came to me as an idea that let's just say somebody is 200 pounds or
Mhm.
220, let's say, and they say, man, I really want to get to 200 pounds. And I kind of had to because this happened the other day in the office, and I said, well, what is your obsession with 200 pounds? I was like, well, why 200? They said, well, I just think I'd lose, I'd lose some fat and look better that way. Okay. But here's the thing. I mean, I have seen guys that are at 200 pounds that are, have a different percentage of body fat, like their
Mhm.
composition is made up so much differently. And I think this is where people maybe it's clicking right now for some folks. They're saying it's not really the number on the scale, although, like you said, it's a tool.
Right.
And of course, everybody when they're in a fat loss mode or a weight loss mode, they think, man, I just want to weigh less.
Right.
But you could be 200 pounds and muscle, you have no muscle. And as guys and as women, I think most women say, I just want to tone up. They just say
Right.
tone up all the time. I don't want to
Right.
have this on my belly or this flap underneath my arm, and I want to tone up. And so, I kind of have to, and I'm sure you're in the same boat here going, what does that take? So we, kind of have to look at like body percent fat, right? So like
Right.
to me, that's going to be way more important than what the scale says. Like I was kind of joke with my wife. I said, I'd love to be about 215 and full muscle. I don't care what the scale says necessarily. Like it
Right.
doesn't work like that, like when you start doing it the right way, it's hard to get 215 in muscle, right? Like,
Yeah.
it depends on the person and kind of, like you said,
Right.
height and all these things do make a difference. But,
Oh, there's
you know,
so many factors. But
yeah,
unfortunately, a lot of people will chalk up it's my genetics, it's my thyroid, it's my this, it's my that. I'm big boned. Those
right.
are all variables and a lot of times excuses. It really comes
Sure.
down to, are you willing to shift your mindset? Are you willing to change your relationship with food? Are you willing to increase your activity? Are you willing to, I'm not making this sound like it's a really difficult thing, but are you willing to measure and count and all these different things? None of it has to be difficult. None of it has to be, you don't have to be neurotic about any of it. You just have to start making small choices. Start with
Hmm.
one thing and focus on that. Um, for a lot of people, I see some of the greatest successes with weight loss, fat loss transformations with the person who just started walking first. They didn't
Hmm.
change their dietary habits yet. They just started walking first.
Oh
They
yeah.
start, and then they go, "Oh, I bet I could walk a lot easier if I was eating better." And then they might not even restrict their calories yet or alter their calorie intake yet, but they'll start picking better choices.
Hmm.
And so, there's all these variables. Um, a lot of times, excuses. I hear people say, "Oh, I don't have the motivation." I'm like, "Do you want to lose weight?" They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, You're motivated.
Yep.
You're
That's it.
you're
That's
plenty
all it takes.
motivated. The discipline is the hard part, and I've
Right.
always said that. Motivation's easy, and look, it's semantics. I've seen other experts kind of flip those two, and or say, we're not always motivated to go to the gym, but you make yourself go, and blah blah blah. Motivation's not always there. I feel like to me, the motivation's almost always there. There
Hmm.
are days I don't feel like going to the gym, but in my head, I'm like, man, I want to go get jacked, but I don't feel like going. Well, I'm motivated. I've got some motivation. I want to go. There's a reason. It's the discipline. It's the
Yeah.
action. It's the moving forward. And weight loss, transformation, weight management, fat loss, it does not have to be a linear progression. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be a lot. It just has to be something. As
Hmm.
long as you're progressing, that's the key. All the information out there now says for good healthy weight loss, 1 to 2 pounds a week. That's in my guide. Well, most people, if they need to lose a lot, they're going to lose a ton in the first couple of weeks. It's super encouraging.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden it starts to plateau. That's when the hard work comes into play. That's when you got to stay diligent and recognize, okay, at
Right.
this point, I'm at a 1 to 2 pound a week kind of progression. And there might be some weeks you don't lose. Then there'll be another
Right.
week you lose 4. It's you
And
want
you're
to think
not
of
doing
it as,
anything wrong if you don't lose.
nope, your
Just a
body
time.
acclimates. And so
Yeah.
you have to create a new stress to it, a good stress to it. You have to change something.
Hmm.
It's all about controlling variables. You alter those things, and you always want to have a couple variables in your back pocket that you can continue to make changes to.
Yeah.
Because
You could have a
if you
stressful week, less sleep. I mean,
so
who
much.
knows what?
I mean, with the last category on my guide is about sleep and stress management. You know, that stuff is crucial,
Yeah.
crucial. Now, everyone, the second someone learns about cortisol, the stress hormone,
Right.
like, oh, cortisol is what's keeping me fat. Okay, that's a little overboard. It is a very powerful hormone.
Sure.
And we do live stressful lives, and we're dumping cortisol, but we're also dumping adrenaline all the time. And that's cortisol is just trying to balance out your adrenaline a lot of times. It's not simply about, oh, it's too much cortisol. It's too much cortisol. Cortisol's bad. No, it's not. It's a hormone. You make it. You need it. You got
Right.
to have it. Too much adrenaline is a bad thing too. And that's why cortisol will kick in as well, because your body's like, oh, got to balance that out. But you got to get that sleep. You got to find ways to manage stress. Part of my big stress management is the gym.
Hmm.
That's a big part of it for me.
You
I
actually
mean,
mentioned earlier motivation, and I've always found that two things always really help me motivate. The first thing is when I don't have the motivation or I don't feel like doing it today, like you said,
mhm.
it's real easy to go take your shirt off in the mirror and go, I can find a little motivation here. Like that's
Yeah, yeah,
okay. And the second part of it is I always say, let's give it 10 minutes. I'm going to start with 10 minutes. And usually, 35 minutes goes by and I go, okay, well, guess I killed that 10 minutes, because once you
yeah.
get started, it becomes real simple. But it's,
I've found, and I don't know if it's just something that I've made myself think over the years. Some of the greatest workouts I've had in 26 years of lifting weights were the days I didn't want to be there.
hmm,
They
interesting.
were like, and not just in the sense of like, oh man, like that was a really good workout, like crazy pump, like so, muscle super swollen, which the only way you're gonna get like that is to really push yourself to certain limits. And I'm like, man, I walked in here, I didn't want to be here today, and I just had one of the best workouts I've ever had.
Yeah.
You're right. Sometimes just do the first step. You
Yeah.
know, get on the treadmill, take the first step. Get on the bike and just go for that first minute. Grab a dumbbell and do that first set, whatever it is. You keep going. It's you feed off of your own energy to an extent.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll tell you. Here's the biggest thing: motivation, the discipline. The One of the things that keep you going during the hard times, where you're kind of like feeling beat up by what you're trying to accomplish, is to remember your why. And I know that's cliche, but it's so true.
Yeah.
When people say to me like, I don't know how you do that for the competitions. My why is pretty simple. I have a date and a competition marked on the calendar. I get 10 minutes on stage to show the work that I did for the last, well, technically lifetime, but change intensity for the last 8, 12 weeks. I've got 5, 10 minutes on stage. I'm not going to ruin that opportunity by doing something along the way. That's my why in those situations. For some people, we got to a little interview, do a little discussion, figure out their why. Because a lot of people say, "Well, to get healthy." I agree. That's a very good why. But why? How does that change your life? I can play with my grandkids again. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
That's the big
hard days,
motivator,
remember
right?
your why. Yep.
Yeah. Right. Let me go over kind of some question answers. Maybe you can help out a little
Mhm.
bit with some of these that I posted the other day, and I thought some of them were pretty good questions actually. So, um, one thing before we do that though, earlier we are talking about you said you kind of have a shut off whenever when you get hungry or get you're full. There's just a shut off that happens. My personal opinion is, and you might agree, disagree, but it seems like to me, like when I was younger, I didn't have much of a shut off because I had probably a terrible diet from a young age. And it
Right.
was, I think my blood sugar fluctuations and stress from school and this and different things, like I didn't have good habits built in. And I feel like I probably had some blood sugar ups and downs, pretty high, peaks and valleys. And when I would get low, man, I could eat. Man, I'm thinking about my
Yeah.
dinner at lunchtime, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say that coming into the office, like, I can eat and eat and eat. And it's, I'm just hungry all the time. And I kind of feel
Right.
like that's kind of that blood sugar issue. I mean, if it dips way down low, we tend to get real hungry, and then you start eating, it comes up a little bit, you start, okay, I feel a little better. And then, as it dips back down, I mean, it becomes a problem really. So that's
Right.
kind of leads into my first question is, how do you break the sugar craving?
So for me, typically it's going to be just straight up avoidance. Is going to be a big part of it. It's like, I love candy. I like sugar. It's just something I grew up with.
Okay.
My dad and I used to tear open a packet of Jello, just pour it in a bowl and just start eating the powder. So, I mean, it's something that I've become very used to. So, um, straight up avoidance is part of it, but also eating an apple. My go-to, like I was saying earlier, is a glass of orange juice. Like when I feel like, oh man, I want some candy, I want some Skittles, I want a Snickers or something like that. If I drink a glass of orange juice, I'm usually good.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
is that sugar?
Yep.
Yeah, but that's stuff. I mean, it's not candy. It's not garbage,
No, that's true.
and that oftentimes takes care of it.
Okay.
If you avoid the refined sugars, your candies, your ice creams, and things like that for enough days, and it's typically not that many days, about a handful or so. You really don't. It's more mental at that point. If you're saying you're craving it, that's because you're choosing to crave it. You're not. Your body's not going to sit there and go, "Oh, we need that sugar again." You avoid it for long enough, a handful of days or so, you're usually going to be good.
Okay. Well, there we go. Avoidance. That's the big one. Can I lose weight faster by doing weights or cardio?
Are we talking weight or are we talking recompositioning the body? Um, I crack up when I hear the old, muscle weighs more than fat. Well, let's think about the words we just said. A pound of muscle weighs the same as a pound of fat.
Right.
Muscle takes up less space than fat.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful. It's a great question. Should I lift weights? Should I do cardio? You should do both. Cardio, I can't tell you how many times in my life I've heard someone say, I want to lose weight, so I started doing cardio. I'm like, you do cardio for your cardiovascular system. It's
Right.
super important. It's good for your lungs. It's good for your heart. You need to do it, and you will burn some calories. But they show over and over and over, your caloric burn is about 2 to 4 hours post cardio. Your caloric burn post lifting weights is going to be 24 hours plus. Not to mention, as you continue to increase your lean muscle tissue, um, you're creating tissue that needs more energy, so it's going to burn.
There's the
You've
guy on YouTube that says, this is not how you burn fat. And okay, to some level, I mean, I understand what you said. And even in the beginning, like I had a high school teacher ask me one time, would you rather get smashed by 1,000 pounds of feathers or bricks? So, well,
both 1,000 pounds.
yeah, it doesn't really matter, frankly. But I mean, you want to die faster, a little bit slower. I mean, it kind of depends
Right.
how you want to go about it. So it kind of made me laugh when you said that, man. But you know, um, so that doesn't give people an excuse not to do some cardio. When they say, well, it's a little
Right.
bit slower, it's more for your cardiovascular system. That doesn't mean don't do it. It means,
Right.
just understand it, understand what's happening.
But if
Yeah,
if the question is really like, what's going to be better for fat loss, lift the weights.
yeah.
And it doesn't have to be bodybuilding style. Just do some kind of resistance training.
How long would you
And the
say somebody
cardio
should
doesn't.
be in the gym then? Like lifting weights. Like if you go in, like, do you have to spend 4 or 5 hours in there? Because a lot of people are, convinced like that's the only way,
Good
right?
question. Yeah,
Yeah,
I get that all the time. Like, you must spend hours in the gym. I'm like, nah, I go 4 days a week for about an hour each time. They're like, what? I was like, first of all, I've been doing it for 26 years, so I've had the foundation's been there for a very long time.
right.
And I'm not trying to necessarily gain or change it at this point, so I don't need to apply different stresses or change very many variables. Then there's the talk of the opposite of that is, well, if you go over an hour, then you're releasing cortisol and it's defeating the purpose. That's not accurate either. But it's not necessarily a 2 hour work. When people are like, I don't have time for that, I'm like, yeah, I don't either. I technically do. I don't like I got better things to do. I'd rather watch a basketball game or a baseball game than be in the gym for 2 or 3 hours. It depends on where your baseline is. I mean, it's a great question, but it's relative. If you're at 0, meaning you don't do any physical activity, go to the gym for 20 minutes 3 times a week. Start with that.
Yeah.
Do a 1 set per body part, full body workout. Start with that. So it's all relative. And the cardio doesn't have to be walking on a treadmill for 45 minutes. I hate cardio. So one of the things when I make myself do it is I'll wear a 30 to 60 pound vest, walk on an incline for 15 minutes. I just burned a heck of a lot more doing that, and it's very taxing on my lungs. So, and then as you know, I'm sure it's really popular right now, high intensity interval training. I mean, it's been around forever, but it's getting really, really, really popular right now. It works.
Sure.
It's, intervals of intense cardio movements or activities within 20 minutes. And they've done plenty of research. They have to do sprints over a 20-minute period. Sprint, walk back. Sprint, walk back. They do that for 20 minutes. Didn't run a single distance of 5K, and they increased their 5K results. Like they had 5K, then trained for weeks doing sprints only, and they go back and then they crush their 5K time. So, when people say I don't have the time, it's priorities. You make the time.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be
same
hours
24
a day.
hours in it. Same 24 hours in a day, though, huh?
Yep.
That's it, man. Best way to lose belly fat. I think there's, and so this gets challenging, right? Because there's some things that we can use that kind of help with the system along. That you can't.
Right.
I mean, to some level, if you use some technology, I think it can be possible to help the body, and that's really, I think that's why I think chiropractors are awesome. Like the psychology and the just the mental way that chiropractors think about things is we're working with the body to support the body. Right. So like you're doing things to not necessarily, like when you lose fat, you're going to lose it more globally along the body as a whole when you're eating right and exercising and this kind of thing. Now, if you use some technology, it can help, but it's all combined together.
Assistance.
It's not designed to say like, I just want to lose it under my arms. Like it's going to be there everywhere else. Like it doesn't typically work like that, although we have some tools in place now that can kind of help with some of that a little bit, but it's all of it together is really what makes the difference to me. That's what I see anyway.
If we're strictly talking, I'm using my food intake and my activities to lose my weight. How do I lose belly fat? It's consistency.
Right.
All of us are going to be genetically predisposed to certain areas of the body will lose that fat faster. Also, it's going to have to do with how much adipose tissue is in that region. So wherever there's, you have the most, that's where it's my low back. I did a bunch of competitions where I got on stage and you could see veins in my abs and my obliques were shredded, and I still had some body fat on my low back. So the only way I got that to come away going into a competition is I stayed on my weight management longer. I stayed on my food intake plan longer. I started it 2 weeks earlier so that I got to that point by the time I got on stage that I had 2 more weeks of being in the caloric burn to get that last bit. So, people talk about, I've got stubborn spots on the outside of my hips. I've got stubborn belly fat. It's not stubborn. It's just you have to continue to be consistent. That's really what it comes down to.
I got you.
And
so
then,
a couple weeks before this challenge, you were talking about you pretty much stay lean and kind of eat the same things all the time. So there's some slight variations, I guess, during contest time. You kind of have to get ready for it and do a few things different. And obviously that's way deeper than what most of these people care about on this watching this. But Yeah.
So
So
you take
that's
the same, it's all the same principles. You take those principles and you just change them to, an everyday person's lifestyle. And it really comes down to three things, really. Like you just said, I'm pretty consistent year round. Those three variables that I really change when it's time to tighten things up, my 80/20 rule changes. It goes to 99 and 1. There's like you don't really allow that 20% anymore. You gotta just really dial in.
right.
I increase my caloric expenditure, so I don't work out longer necessarily. I increase the intensity, so I'll shorten my rest times so that I'm burning a little bit more. I'll
Mm,
increase my cardio, make my cardio more intense, and then I start more portion control. I'll eat the same foods sometimes. I might
right.
clean them up so I'm a little more nutrient dense, and less of just calorie dense foods. I'll pick a little bit different foods, but it really comes down to I just like each week my portion just keeps coming down just a little bit.
I see.
I don't do
Yeah.
it like, oh, I eat like this much on the plate and now I'm going to go to this much because I need else. Slow and steady, especially because I'm trying to maintain as much muscle as possible.
Yeah.
So I want to
That
make
brings
sure
up
that protein is
an
there.
interesting point too, where, I think, when you look at like let's just say like an app, like I like to use like MyFitnessPal just because it's easy to kind of pop in your foods, especially starting out for folks. Like, I totally recommend that for folks. But it's getting enough protein is not something that probably 95% of people are doing where, if you're saying, if we prioritize protein, not to ignore the other two, but like fats and carbs, but also just prioritizing your protein. If you were to
Right.
look at probably the last month of the average guy's diet or female, either way, they're probably about maybe half of what they need, if half, would you
Yeah.
say? I mean, I
Every
noticed that when
meal,
I first started, it was
everybody,
like, whoa, that's rough. Like,
yeah.
and not only that,
Yep.
but I'd hurt myself, hurt my shoulder actually working out one time, and I just started tracking my macros like that, and that's what they call macros, your proteins, your carbs, and your fats. But I noticed like I wasn't eating enough protein, but when I started eating more protein, I mean, you are
You
what you
recovered.
eat. Yeah. Like you
Right.
are what you eat. So like if you're not eating enough protein and you hurt yourself, you need
Right.
protein so your body can actually heal and work like it should. So it's like it makes such a big difference to
You
like get it in properly.
you should plan and design all of your meals, regardless of what approach you're going to take. That your number one, your first priority is what's my protein, how much, and what's my source, and then you build
Yeah.
from there the rest of your meal. This also doesn't need to be 6 small meals a day helps you lose weight versus 3 medium-sized. There's no truth behind any of that. It's all accumulation. It's a matter of how many. If you want to eat one 2,000 calorie meal a day and that's your intake, then so be it. Have
Yeah.
at it. If there's no science has never proven that 6 small meals a day is a better way to lose weight or burn fat. There's no. I eat like that because that's just the way it is. I get full pretty easily, and then I'm hungry in an hour or two. So I just naturally eat that. I don't do that in order to stay lean. But protein has to be the priority, and you're absolutely right. Most people would be shocked.
You were saying earlier, and we kind of got on a tangent here, but using some technology to help.
You have red light, correct?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So I know that's a big one. Um, I've been approached by a couple companies recently to bring in their devices. Um, benefit. If that's what someone can use that as their only method, they're
Right. I
missing the
agree.
really important parts.
Yeah, I think it's a combined approach. Obviously, like, they always want to sell things to you, especially as practitioners. I mean, it's like this is all you
Right.
need. I'm like, that is not all you need. Like that's gonna be a one tool in the box to help along the pathway. And if that helps people like start losing weight a little faster and gets them motivated, I think that's what it's all about is, helping you get on the right track.
Right.
My goal is not to have you in my office on red light for the rest of your life. Absolutely not. My goal is to get you
Right.
motivated and show you that, this can help you. It's a tool along the pathway. And let's, if there's other things that we can do to help and kind of, use technology or use science to help you and back that supporting of the system, then let's do that. But, there's no
Right.
real cheat way. Like a 1 to 2 pounds a week is fantastic. I mean, that's the goal. There's
Yep.
no, I've seen guys that even friends of mine that post up stuff that I'm on a tuna and whatever diet and like they eat like so little.
Right.
I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, you're gonna lose so much muscle mass. Like, yeah, you might drop weight and you're real proud of your weight loss, but yeah, and I guess that's great, but I mean, you're gonna look like a stick when you're done. I mean, why? I mean, you're
Yeah.
killing yourself. I mean, there's just no reason to do that.
Well,
So
if you look at the 1 to 2 pounds a week, that's 50 to 100 pounds in a year. What's wrong with that? That's awesome.
yeah, that's great. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, we're a
But
Netflix
we
society
should
though,
talk
right? We
about,
want things fast. We want to turn it on and we want to
yeah.
watch the movie and like, that's just not how this works. So I think you just need to be,
Right.
aware of that coming in. It's not something that we're going to tell you it's, this is all going to fall off in a week. It doesn't work like not unless we cut it off. I mean, that's the only way that's going to happen. But,
Right.
we can lose 20 pounds by cutting your legs off.
Yeah. We I'm treating him for neuropathy right now, and he's had a significant weight increase in recent years. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm really excited about doing a neuropathy program." And then he grabs his gut and says, "Anyway, we could chop this off." I was like, "Well, funny you mentioned that. We do have a program that we do. Let's focus on your neuropathy first. Your feet not hurting as badly will get you to start walking more, and then at least we've got one variable that we've changed, and then we can get a little bit more progressive." But you talked about that. You mentioned the scale earlier. You do want to utilize the scale, but when you're doing things the right way, maybe once a week, get on the scale. Maybe once a week.
Yeah.
I like pictures, measurements, how your clothes fit, and most importantly, how you feel. To
Yeah.
me, those are the most important things to measure. And how you feel, you can journal.
Yeah.
That's all.
How are your shirts
That
feeling?
way
How
you
are
can
your
kind of
pants feeling? Are they falling off you at the end of the day? Like, you know, and
yep,
probably even, I know this sounds funny, but, even measuring yourself in the morning, right? Like before you
yeah,
start eating your first meal or, after you go to the bathroom and maybe, before you do anything else, like that's when you want
right.
to be consistent about your measurements, not several times a day. And for
Absolutely.
guys like you that have been doing this a long time, sometimes it's just ingrained in, but it's not, folks getting started, obviously we got to start at the base levels. So that's,
Right.
just kind of
Yep.
as a reminder for those you watching that, you got to do things consistently and that's all part of this game. So yeah, I think that's actually all my questions that were asked. So is there anything else? We got a couple minutes here left, man. Is there anything else you want to kind of touch on?
Like I said, I can keep going, but
This could be really long, right? Yeah, I feel you, man.
the keys are, it's really habits. It's habits. It's and then and just altering one variable at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself. That's the recipe for disaster. And unfortunately, I think that to me is one of the biggest reasons why people fail on their journey. They're choosing to try and get these goals is they get overwhelmed. They restrict themselves too much, and they don't address their why. Truly get to their why and their relationship with food, the mental, the psychological aspect of it.
I got you. One last question. I got a couple minutes here before it cuts me off, but a lot of questions come up along about like hormone treatments. Can
Mm-hmm.
people go in and they say, well, my testosterone's low. I've always heard, and from what I've read and studied, that your testosterone shouldn't really go down it with aging. They kind of
No.
advertise it like that way, and
Right.
and funny enough, I mean, I had an older gentleman come in to me for back pain, and I adjusted him a few times, and his wife came in and said, whatever you did to him, undo it, because he was a little more excited around her. How about this? And
Right.
and I said,
Right.
that's just the body working like it should. That's what's supposed to happen. Like, that's how men are built, frankly. We're
Right.
that's just how we are. The physiology's there, but it shouldn't go down over time. And like you were saying earlier, putting eggs in your protein or in your smoothie in the morning is probably actually helping you build the building blocks for your hormones to work properly versus the fear
Yep.
techniques they put out there to say, oh, you're going to get salmonella doing that, or don't touch it, or wash your hands after
Yeah.
the egg,
Yeah.
and this kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I found that interesting. I didn't know
Well,
that you did like Rocky style eggs, man. That's cool.
oh, yeah. 25, 26 years I've been doing that. I don't shoot it. I've done that, but I don't shoot it. I just put it in my shake and blend it all up.
Right, right.
But as far as hormones and people on hormone replacement and things like that, look, having that stuff balance is very, very important. But one thing to keep in mind is a lot of people's hormones are out of balance because of their metabolic disorders.
Mm.
You start to regulate that aspect, get the metabolism. And look, it might be a hindrance that there's a hormone issue. Maybe you need to work with someone who can help with that stuff. But a lot of times, appropriate foods, appropriate activities kind of jumpstart the body in a lot of ways to get those things to balance themselves out because you've created a dynamic environment. Again, that's what your nervous system and your body are actually seeking.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Hey, thanks for coming on today, taking your Saturday to do this. We super appreciate it. I know the folks watching are gonna love this, and we have systems in our office now that are kind of incorporating all of this and using red light therapy and doing things of this nature to kind of help folks get a jump start on their weight loss journey. So, guys, if you have questions, shoot me a message. Be happy to answer them. So appreciate you, Adam. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, of course, man. It's my pleasure. I enjoy it.
Awesome, bud. Okay, we'll talk to you later, man.